Let's talk about an election that wasn't decided by thousands or even hundreds of votes. It was decided by just 7. 7 votes. The entire future of the Western Angami constituency in Nagaland came down to a number you can count on your fingers. This isn't just a political headline. It's a powerful story about governance and about the weight of a single person's choice.
So how on earth did this happen? Well, here's how we're going to break it down. First, we'll look at the shocking result itself. Then, we're going to feel the pulse of the people of Western Angami. After that, we'll watch how a political fortress, standing for 2 decades, finally crumbled. We'll dissect the anatomy of this massive upset. And finally, we'll map out a blueprint for how a party can win back trust after a loss this close.
All right, so first things first, let's just sit with the outcome of the 2023 election. It sent shockwaves through Nagaland, and honestly, it should be a case study for anyone in politics. It's the perfect example of why you can never, ever take a single vote for granted. Just look at that number, 7. Think about it for a second. More than 14,000 people went to the polling booths. They stood in line, they cast their ballots, and at the end of it all, the difference was 7. This one digit flipped a seat, and it fundamentally changed the political dynamic of the region. Here's how it broke down. You have the NDPP candidate who got 7,078 votes, and right behind, their opponent, an independent, who was actually the incumbent from the Naga People's Front, or NPF, with 7,071. That's it. That razor-thin margin was all it took to end the NPF's 20-year hold on this constituency.
So who are the people at the very center of this incredible story? What makes them tick? What are they really struggling with every day? And what brings them to the polls in such huge numbers? If you want to understand the result, you have to understand the voter.
Welcome to Western Angami. It's a key constituency in the Kohima district, and it's home to the Angami Naga community. We're talking about a place with deep roots in agriculture, incredibly strong community bonds, and a very high literacy rate. This is where tradition and the modern world meet, and the voters, well, they are very, very aware of their power. And you know what? They use that power. Look at this. Voter turnout consistently hits around 80%. This is not an electorate that stays home on election day. These are people who show up because they genuinely believe their voice can make a difference. And when you have that level of engagement, no leader can afford to get comfortable. But let's be clear, this engagement is also fueled by very real day-to-day problems. These are the things that define life here. You have chronic water shortages. You have a collapsed national highway that just cripples daily life and business. You have educated young people with no real job prospects. And you have public services that just aren't keeping up. These aren't just policy points, they are daily struggles. Now here's what's so interesting. The NPF's loss in 2023, it wasn't a sudden shock. It was actually the last step in a long, slow decay of power. The warning signs, well, they were flashing for years. Just follow the timeline. Back in 2008, the NPF had a solid lead, over 1,400 votes. By 2013, it was still a comfortable 1,000. But then look at 2018. The margin gets slashed to under 700. That was the real warning shot. And then 2023. This is a textbook case of a party slowly losing its connection to the ground until it's just too late.
And while the NPF was slowly bleeding support, a new challenger was quietly building momentum. The NDPP only showed up here in 2018, but they immediately grabbed almost 42% of the vote. Fast forward to 2023, and they methodically pushed that number up to nearly 50%, just enough to cross the finish line. This wasn't just an NPF loss, it was a strategically executed NDPP win.
So how does a 20-year dynasty just disappear? It's never one single thing, right? In Western Angami, the story of how that fortress finally fell really comes down to 3 crucial factors. First, the power of alliances. The NDPP teamed up with the BJP, and that created a massive statewide advantage. Second, and this is the big one, deep cracks inside the NPF itself. And third, you just had an electorate that was ready for something new, ready for a change, which was perfectly symbolized by the NDPP's candidate becoming the first woman to win this seat.
And those internal fractures, they were absolutely critical. Think about it. The NPF denies its own sitting MLA a ticket. So what does he do? He doesn't go away quietly. He runs as an independent, and he takes over 7,000 votes with him. That one decision by the party leadership split their own base right down the middle and basically gift-wrapped the election for the opposition, a classic self-inflicted wound.
But look, a loss, especially a loss this narrow, is not a dead end. It's a data point.
It is a clear, unfiltered message from the people, and it gives you a precise blueprint for a comeback. So let's talk about the strategy. How does a party rebuild and turn this failure into a future victory?
The blueprint itself isn't rocket science, but it demands incredible discipline. 4 pillars. First, reconnect on cultural identity. Be seen as a true guardian of Angami values. Second, make your entire agenda about solving those real local problems: water, roads, jobs. Third, mix old-school door-to-door campaigning with a smart digital strategy. And fourth, and most importantly, just listen. Send your youth and women's groups out, not to give speeches, but to actually hear people.
And your messaging has to be this sharp, this direct. A line like this is perfect. It shows you understand the voter's reality, it acknowledges the current effort, the tanker, but immediately calls it what it is, a temporary fix. And then it pivots to the real demand, a permanent solution. This is how you draw a clear contrast between your vision and the status quo.
Of course, in a race that comes down to a handful of votes, the messenger matters just as much as the message. Choosing the right candidate is everything. Do you go with a young professional with fresh energy? A respected elder who can bring everyone together? Or maybe an outsider who can appeal to voters who are tired of the old politics? This choice, it can be the difference between winning and losing.
When you boil it all down, the story of Western Angami is a lesson for every democracy everywhere. It's proofs that there's no such thing as a safe seat. It shows that ignoring the small, local issues is the fastest way to get voted out. Because when the margin is this thin, every single voice matters, every single problem matters, and every single vote is sacred.
So we're left with a very simple but very powerful question. If a political fortress held for 2 decades can fall by just 7 votes, what does that tell you about the power that you hold? It tells us our vote is never wasted. It's the most powerful tool we have. If you want to become a people-centric leader and uplift your constituency, get in touch with blueprintstrategies.ai at mgr@blueprintstrategies.ai or call 080-4204-1602. Purpose beyond politics.